Hey, I'm back. This is Chandler for Melda Production. Last week I released a song called the Faceless Immortals, and today I'm going to go over and break it down. So I really love fantasy author Brandon Sanderson, and I wanted to do something kind of like a tribute to him and his books, but also because MTurboamp is coming out, I wanted to like show off some things it could do. So I decided let me make like a metal style song. And today I'm going to break down what I did specifically with the guitars. Now, I'm technically using MTurboamp, but I'm using it inside the unreleased MGuitararchitect. So this is kind of like a preview of that if you're wondering what that's going to be like and what it can do. It's not done yet, but get an idea from here. So let's get started. I used about 3 rhythm guitar tracks for the heavy stuff. I recommend listen to the whole thing if you haven't done that yourself. Please, listen to my music. But I'll let you hear like parts of it here, and then we'll break it down. So let's get to the guitars. So I put all the 3 guitars in through a rhythm guitar bus. And if you're wondering why did you do that? One reason is because I want to use the multi-analyzer on these. And when I do that, I can see what frequencies are clashing between, let's say, the drum set, the bass, and the rhythm guitars like this. With this, as I said before, the threshold is very important. If I move it up too low, everything's going to clash. However, if I move it up really high, nothing's going to clash. So if you know anything about it, I usually set it around like -30. I think that's where like you can actually hear things start to clash. I mean, obviously if it's like -85, who can even hear like overlaps, that low? But obviously if I have it like a -8, it's like, yeah, you're definitely going to hear it. -30 is where I like to set it, but of course you can set it, anywhere you want it. It's up to you. But that's why I put everything in one bus, just so I could see that a little bit more easily. The next thing is I have MTurbo EQ. What I did with this is I just cut off lots of the low end and some of the low mids because I didn't want it to interfere with the bass. I had the kick drum hitting and I have a bass guitar, and I really thought like I don't really need a lot of that low end or even the low mids. I just want these to fill out some of the high end and a little bit of the mids, but not too much. So I'll turn it on and off and you can hear it. Let me solo it. So as you can hear there, it's cutting off a lot of the low end, but I'm even cutting off a little bit of the high end. Some of that fizz I'm just getting rid of. And there was some stuff in the middle around 100 hertz, and I turned that down just to be less boxy. I really like this model in MTurbo EQ. This is the first one, but it sounded good to me, so I stuck with it. And last, I used the compressor on this. And you're wondering, like, why would you use a compressor? These are distorted guitars. They're not going to have lots of dynamics. And that's actually true. The dynamics actually weren't that bad. The problem was between the right and the left, sometimes one would be slightly higher or lower, and it makes it seem like it kind of like drifts back and forth. So putting the compressor on there kind of evened it out. And the way that works is I changed the link to 0. If you put it at 100%, it's like one compressor and it's going to compress the right channel and left channel at the same amount. When you put it at 0, it's like having 2 separate compressors on the right and left channel. So I'll let you hear it with and without. It just seems a little bit more controlled to me, so that's why I did it. Now I'll show you each one. Maybe you want to hear what each is doing. This is the center guitar. I have a doubler here, but I'm not using it at this part. I use it a little bit later, and I have it automated. So as you can see on the right, you can actually use MPs here, and I have that so I could automate the doubling very easily and turn that, on and off. But as you see here, it's at 0, so it's not actually doing anything during this part. What is happening is I'm using the cabinet here. I use Tatsu. I have it, set here. I just turned it down a little bit. It didn't do too much else. I guess it does have 50 hertz high pass filter, but that's not really doing too much. Then I have the amp. I'm using Chromium. I think this is actually one of the first things I made for MTurboamp, at least the first really high gain amp. I like the sound of it, but it is a little bit boxy, I think. So I put the definition booster here. What the definition booster will do is it really doesn't add like distortion so much as it will change the tone. You can use it as a boost to like up the volume if you want, but more importantly, the tightness. What this will do is it'll cut off the low end going into your amp. So if your amp is a little bit like flubby, it gets rid of that. So I'll let you hear, and I have a gate on here, but that's not really important. But let's hear it with the definition booster and without. So I'll play it. And you can control the tightness here with this knob. But I hope you heard that it was less flubby when I did that. So that's what we have here for our center guitar. Let's move it to the right one. This is on the right, but I'll move it to the center so you can hear it a little bit more clearly. This is basically the same thing. I have the gate on here. I have the amp. This is the Phobos amp. Really like this amp. This is one I designed specifically for heavy metal. It should give you, hopefully, I think a modern sound, but what do I know? I have the gain right at the middle. It's fairly high gain, so it really doesn't need more. I have the bass down a little bit, the middle down a little bit, the treble up, presence just a little bit up, the depth a little bit down. The depth kind of gives it more low end. And there's 3 settings: worry, dread, and terror. I have it on the terror setting. I think the terror setting is the best for kind of like a raw sound. It gives you more high end, and for me, I think it's better for rhythm guitar stuff. It's really biting. The dread is a little bit more rounded and smooth, and the worry is just like lower gain. It also has a tightness knob, which I turned up, but I wanted a little bit more tightness, so what I did was I used the MD1. I turned the gain down because I didn't want that. I wanted the tone a little bit up, and it should just kind of push the mids a little bit. I'll let you hear with and without. So it emphasizes those upper mids. And what I wanted for this is I wanted the right and left pan guitars to give that high end, and then the middle to give the maybe more of the meat. So that's why I did this. In the other one, the one that's panned left, I'll let you hear, but it's pretty much the same thing. Oh, I think I didn't mention that. I use the Tengu cabinet. I use that for the other one too. I have the Phobos amp, almost the exact same setting, except this time I turned up the mids instead of turned them down, but I think everything else is the same. And then I use the same drive pedal with the same settings, gate settings the same, etc. So I'll let you hear this. So I thought this was a match, especially since I was using a 7-string guitar here and I had those lows. It sounds good to me, but I guess everybody's taste is different. Maybe it doesn't sound good to you, but hopefully this gives you an idea of what this can do. From there, I have another part here where I have clean guitar sounds. I'll let you hear that. For this one, I'll let you hear clean guitar 1. What I have here is I have a chorus. Sounds pretty nice to me. It's coming after the amp. And for the amp, I use the Minneapolis amp. This is a nice, clean amp. I didn't really mess with anything. Just turned it on and it sounded like what I wanted to sound like, so that's good. I'm using this clean machine cabinet. I put it right here, just kind of in the middle. I moved that around until it sounded good to me. And then I have it going into a hall reverb. Sounds like this. And then after all of this, I just have it going into a compressor, and that's because I want everything to be even. I need a little bit more sustain on here because there's other things like drums and things that I don't want it to get lost. The other clean guitar I have here, I did almost the exact same thing. Same amp, same settings, same cabinet. I think it's the exact same place. I think I have the exact same reverb too. Only thing I changed is this time I used a phaser instead. I was going to use another chorus, but I thought, you know what, let me change it up a bit. And I think this sounds good. So the two clean guitars have slightly different characters, and I always think that's good. Next part is a little bit here. I have a lead guitar part. So one of the main things you can hear is I have a delay here. I used MTurbo delay for this, and I put it on a separate bus. I could have done it inside MGuitararchitect, but I thought, you know, why am I going to be wasteful? I can just use one delay for my lead part here and the solo. So I have this. I have it set to straight eighths. Good number of repeats here. It does have ducking, but I didn't use that. And I wanted the BBD because I think that sounds a little bit better than the digital. It's not quite as clean, and it kind of like blends in the background a little bit more easy. I didn't want it to really like get in your face. I just turned the width up a bit so it has a bit of stereo. I think that sounds better to me, at least in this case. Let's see. I'll show you what I did for the lead guitar. So I have a doubler on here. Let me turn this on solo, and let me turn the delay off, and I'll let you hear what the doubler does. Instead of actually sounding like two guitars, what this does is it just adds a bit of depth to it. It sounds like almost like a room sound. I didn't want to go too crazy with this and make it sound like, 1980s, which you can easily do. But in this case, I wanted to be, subtle, just subtle depth. It sounds like it's in a room or something. Next, I have the cabinet. I use the same Tengu cabinet again. I set it to this M lead setting, which is a little bit, I don't know, it's more rounded and soft. It's not as harsh as maybe the turquoise back, I guess. Here, I went into the amp. I'm using the same Phobos amp again. I use the Dread, which is a little bit more rounded and a little bit more smooth. You can see the settings I did here. It's sometimes a little bit too smooth, so I use the treble and presence. And especially to bring out a little bit more of that lead sound, I used the MD1 again, just to boost the upper mids, just so it cuts through the mix. Because I have all those other guitars going, and if I don't do that, it's going to get lost in the background. So I'll let you hear it on and off. So it sounds nice. I'll let you hear it with the delay too. Now, top end sounded a little bit sizzly to me, but I think in the mix it kind of works. It doesn't sound as sizzly when you have all the drums and rhythm guitars and everything else playing. Now, the last one I'll show you here is the solo. I'll let you hear this in context, and then I'll break it down what I did. Okay, so you can hear part of the solo there. I'll show you exactly what I did. I had a delay, which I didn't use, so this isn't on. I was just kind of experimenting before I put the delay bus on there. That's one of the good things about MGuitararchitect. Even if I thought like, oh, you know, I want to save resources, I can kind of use this to see what settings sound good first. Now, amp-wise, I use the Phobos again. Same thing. I think I almost use the same settings I did for the lead for this guitar solo. Cabinet, same settings here. Use the M lead profile and the Tengu. The thing that I did was a bit different. I think even the drive, I used a different drive here. This is the bronze drive. So let me solo this for you. And this will do a similar thing to the MD1, but this one I can choose the frequency of the mid-range a little bit more easily. And I also did actually put a little bit of boost here. Actually, not boost, I should say gain. More distortion. So this just makes it cut through, and like you can hear the pick attack a little bit more prominently, which it's a little bit subtle, but one of the main things besides helping it cut through in the mix is when I'm playing, it's not subtle. The feel under your fingers, like, oh wow, I feel a little bit more gain. I feel like I don't quite have to hit the strings as hard to be able to hear it. You know, it just sounds and it feels a little bit more like spongy and loose and just good. So that's why I use that. The other thing is this ER. So let me turn off the delay bus here so you can hear this a little bit more easily. This is early reflections, and it's going to make it sound like you're in a room. The other times I use the doubler, which can do the similar thing, but the doubler, it almost sounds like fake, whereas this one sounds more natural. And sometimes fake is good, but in this case, I wanted to do something else and make it sound a little bit more natural, so I used the ER. I'll turn it on and off. Now, as you heard, like when I turn it off, one, it loses all stereo width, and it sounds like, you know, the speaker's right against your ear, which to me sounds really unpleasant. It's fine for, you know, rhythm guitar parts, but for a lead, it's like I want, you know, some kind of spatial information. So I use this. I use the studio mode here. There's other modes you can use, but I think the studio is good. So that's how I did that. And then, of course, I have it going into our delay here. So if I put it together, it sounds like this. And same thing with MTurbo EQ. I cut off lots of the low end, cut off some of the high end. I boosted some of the mids just to give it a little bit more warmth, and I cut out 800 hertz is some boxiness. And then at 3000, I boosted this again just to make it cut through. I don't know. When I turned this on and off, I was like, it doesn't really make that much difference, but I don't know. Maybe on that day I felt like it did. I'll let you hear it on and off. When I have headphones on, I can hear there's like a little bit of hiss at the top when I bypass it, and it's slightly more boxy. It's not a big difference, and maybe in the full mix you wouldn't be able to hear it, but I can hear it with the headphones, so that's why I did it. Sometimes you do subtle things like that, and maybe they're only for you, I guess. So that's what I did for all the guitars here. This is mostly a guitar song. Besides guitars, the only other thing I have is drums and bass. But next video, I'll show you how I program the drums, how I program the bass, and everything here on my master bus. So I hope you found this useful and interesting. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. If you like this, give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't done that, and check out all the other plugins at meldaproduction.com. Till next time, see you.